Gotta go.
Great to see everybody kind of coming into the meeting. Numbers are increasing. That's always good to see.
See, one of our folks is here, Barb.
Okay, so I will call on you then.
Yeah, did you check what is Dave's position there on the pin? Did you happen to look at that?
Yeah, Paul Harris +2.
+2, okay. Thank you.
You bet. All right, look at those numbers climb. That's great. We'll get started in another minute.
Yeah. That's another perspective, a different perspective.
Excellent. Here we go. Numbers are up over 50. That's great. So just a reminder to all of our members, please go out and sign in, and we encourage any of our guests, if you'd like to please do so as well. Let us know that you're here. That way we can include your name in our minutes. Glad to see everybody. All right, well, it is 2 minutes after the hour. So we will get started. So with all of our Rotary meetings, we actually start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able to stand and join me in the pledge, please feel free to do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you all. My name's Barb Thomas and I am the president for this current Rotary year. I think after saying the Pledge of Allegiance, I think it's a reminder to us that we certainly are living in historic times. I get kind of tired of saying, you know, unprecedented times. I'd rather right now live in just precedented times, I think. It certainly has been an unusual couple of days. Hopefully we can continue forth and do the good work that Rotary does. And I think that's what we are focused on here today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. So Devin, can I take it back to you for some Zoom tips? So I think we can all welcome Devin back because Devin is back from paternity leave. If you chimed in early, you saw him with one of the 2 twin girls. So Devin, glad to see you again.
Yeah, glad to be back. It's been good being out. They're like 5 feet that way. So if they get too loud, you might get a reprise of babies. But yeah, quick tips. Everybody's a pro by now, probably. Best one is the gallery view and the speaker view up in the top right. Make sure as you're looking at our speaker to switch to speaker view so you can really see what they're doing. You can also slide the presentation back and forth to see more of the presentation or more of the presenter, depending on what you're looking at. Other things to take note of, you can go to reactions, do a little thumbs up or clap emojis, different things to let the presenter know or whoever's talking that they're doing a good job. And then you can sign in with the chat as well. And then finally, if you click into the participants tab, you can raise your hand for questions or if you have something during announcements. And Barb is demonstrating the party emoji there for us. Back to you, Barb.
Great, thank you, Devin, and congratulations. And so next we'll actually go to introductions. So this is an opportunity for you to practice those Zoom skills go to the participants button and raise your hand so that you can be introduced. And then we'll actually ask Devin to call on you. I know that we do have a handful of different visitors today. Let's see, Devin, why don't I turn it over to you for intros?
Yep, thanks, President Barb. To Shaylin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, welcome to the new year. To Shaylin Harrington from Shelter House, and a guest of Barb's as always.
Thanks for coming. Glad to have you, Shaylin. Ryan, do you have a guest?
Yes, I am honored to welcome once again Jesus Garcia. Jesus, you want to introduce yourself real quick to the club?
Hello, hello everyone. My name is Jesus Garcia, and I live in Iowa City, and I happen to paint homes, and most importantly, making them look awesome. And yep, thank you all.
Welcome. Thanks for coming, Jesus. Glad to have you. Justin Thomas.
Hey, I'm Justin Thomas. I'm Barb's son, so I'm actually upstairs from where she's at right now. She talked me into sitting in on this.
Nice. Well, welcome. Glad you came. Glad your mom roped you into it. I know that Tagba is a guest, correct?
Correct. Tagba, can you say hello?
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep, we can.
All right, Tagba here. I live in Iowa City as well. And yeah, I've been coming to this meeting on and off, and I'm glad to be here. Happy New Year to everybody again.
Yeah, Happy New Year. And if you weren't here earlier, you missed baby photos from Tagba. He has a 3-day-old, so he's got me beat in the new baby category.
All right.
Very cute one.
Thank you. Same thing for you. Congratulations. Yep.
Any other visiting Rotarians? I know we've got Gary Wickland here as ever from the Vail Club. He's waving at us. Any other visiting Rotarians or visitors that want to introduce themselves? I don't see any hands raised.
Yep, just really quick. Sorry, Devin. I have a guest, my colleague at the Center for Advancement, Jana Michael.
Hi, thank you for having me. Jana Michael from the University of Iowa Center for Advancement and on behalf of the Tippie College. Nice to see everyone.
Thanks for coming, Jana. Good to see you. Anybody else? All right, back to you, President Barb.
Great, thanks so much, Devin, and welcome to all of our guests. I am very happy to see that Tagba is here, especially given that he does have a 3-day-old, but Tagba is also going to be participating in orientation in a couple of weeks and will be joining our club, as is Jeffrey Dancer. So just a reminder to everyone that it's really all of our role to find new members. Who else in our community wants to make a difference? Who wants to contribute to the good causes of Rotary? And if so, please invite them to join us at a meeting and consider membership. So thanks so much for that. I also want to put a shout out thanks to Aaron Schaefer, because Aaron, if you joined us last week for our New Year's Eve day meeting, Aaron did perform for us. He performed 2 songs, including Smile, which he had to learn for the guitar. So I just want to say thanks again to Aaron. Truly appreciated his participation and taking on that special little extra duty as assigned. So thanks, Aaron. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Vern Folkman, who does have an announcement about the Rotary Foundation. Vern?
Thank you, President Barb. Yes, it gives me great pleasure every time I can do this, and I do it because I like to give these folks recognition. And today we have 2 actually. And the first one being, and what I'd like to say, after I introduce them, if they wanted to say a few words, it'd be fine, and introduce themselves. So you can be thinking about that. But anyway, the first one is Dave Bywater, and he just recently gave to the Rotary to be a Paul Harris Fellow +2. So that means he's given $2,000 toward the Paul Harris Fellow. And Dave, we appreciate that so much, and we hope that you'll continue to do that over the years. So Dave, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Hi, Vern.
Hi, Dave.
I think I understood you say my name. I am pleased to give to the Rotary Foundation every year. It's one of those things that I think is just automatic and part of the right thing to do, especially when you think about all the good works that Rotary does. And I'm particularly pleased to be able to say that I'm a Rotarian and I give to the foundation, and the foundation is so important to not only, well, I should just say the world. In other words, so many great things that are going. And I love to tell the Polio Plus story in particular. So thanks for today.
Thank you, David. We appreciate it. Thanks for those good words. Barb has your pin because it came to her and we didn't get to get it over to me, so I can't show it to you. But one of us will get it to you here shortly. So, and the last fellow is Jim Down. I got to apologize. Neither one of these two actually had a chance. I didn't have a chance to talk to them, so it catches them cold. So, Jim is a Paul Harris Fellow +7, so that means he's given $8,000 to the Paul Harris Fellowship, and we appreciate that so much, Jim. And if it's your pleasure, we'd like to have you introduce yourself and say just a few words. Jim Down. I think he's with us.
Okay, here I am.
There we go, Jim. Thank you.
I thoroughly believe in the Rotary Foundation, and I'm on my way to hit the 10,000.
Great, wonderful. That's kind of where it's going here.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Jim. We appreciate it. I love those pictures on the back of you there.
Yeah, those are some I took.
Those some have you been over to Africa?
Oh, yeah. I've been on 3 or 4 different safaris over there.
Wonderful. Gee, sometime you ought to give a Rotary program on that. That would be very interesting. That's been my life goal to do it, but I don't think I'm going to make it. I've waited too long. So anyway, thanks, Jim, for speaking up. Barb, turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Vern. And thanks to both of you for your contributions to the Rotary Foundation. We greatly appreciate that. If anybody has questions on how to support the Rotary Foundation or what they need to do, Vern is the man to talk to. So feel free to reach out to him and he can provide you with any assistance, answer any questions that you might have. So before we move on to our program, we are going to have our Rotary moment of gratitude and positivity. And we have a special message today from Jean Wandling. So Jean, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Barb. Sending greetings to all of you from South Florida, where I am grateful to not be shoveling snow today. 75 degrees and sunny, and I wish you could all be here. Since my wife and I split our time between Iowa City and Florida, I'm also grateful for Zoom, which enables me to attend many of our Thursday meetings. But what I am most grateful for is all of you who make this such an outstanding club. I say that because since moving to Florida in the winters, I've had the opportunity to attend other Rotary clubs down here, and that has made me appreciate even more how special our club is. One of the first things I learned to appreciate is that being part of a large club like ours offers many advantages, as it provides a larger pool of talent, energy, and firepower to undertake larger and more ambitious projects, such as Iowa Most, such as Ecotepec, Ponseti, FAMSCO, just to mention a few. The second thing I learned to appreciate is our club's diversity, diverse in many ways, but particularly in the integration of women into our club. When I first joined this club 37 years ago, it was an all-male organization. And the women, since the club opened up membership to women, they have contributed massively in terms of service and leadership for the betterment of our club. As my wife would say, if you need something done and you need it done right, ask a woman. And thank you, ladies, you have made this a much better club. The third thing I appreciate about our club is the involvement and leadership provided by our younger generation of members. We have an amazing group of young people. and I continue to be impressed by their energy and leadership, all of which I think bodes well for the future of our club. Now I'm going to close this abbreviated moment of gratitude with a thought on what is happening in Washington, D.C. As Rotarians, we subscribe to Rotary's four-way test. As Rotarians, we value truth, we value fairness, we value goodwill and friendships, and we value the welfare of others. We also subscribe to the motto of service above self. It is very concerning that these values are not fully shared inside the Beltway. And I can't help but believe the nation would be in a much better place if there were more Rotarians leading our government. Now that's all I have for a Rotary moment. Barb, did you want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
You know, since we have, I'm going to change gears a bit, and since we have Nate Kaeding here today, I thought I would share a little known football story from It's a Small World department. By way of background, two of the first people I met at the University of Iowa, and two of my closest college friends are Bob and Julie Novak. Now, both Bob and Julie earned their undergraduate and graduate degrees at Iowa, remained in Iowa City for several years post-graduation. And some 50 years later, Bob and Julie still periodically make return visits to Iowa City, stayed at our house on several occasions. On one of their return visits, and this was probably a good 20 years ago, their son, Nick Novak, came with them. Nick was about to enter his senior year of high school in Virginia and was a standout place kicker for his high school football team. Now, one morning, Nick and his father and I went out to West High School so that Nick could practice kicking field goals in preparation for his upcoming season. And after about half an hour of watching Nick kick 30 to 40-yard field goals, I spotted Mr. Kaeding walking down the hill toward the football field. And I don't know how many footballs he had with him, but I do distinctly remember that he had two young ladies with him. And by the way they were walking on each side, I do not think they were his sisters. Well, to make a long story short, Nate and his sisters set up camp at the other end of the football field, and Nate began kicking very long field goals, matching everything Nick could do at the opposite end. Now, I'm sure that Nate had no idea who Nick was, but I provided Nick with a little background on Nate. And my recollection is that they spoke briefly as we left. Now, fast forward 5 years. Nate completes his senior year at West and goes on to have an outstanding career for the Hawkeyes, while Nick completed his senior year in Virginia and proceeded to the University of Maryland, where he also had an outstanding collegiate career. Now, you longtime Hawkeye fans will recall that at the conclusion of Nate's senior year, he was awarded the Lou Rosa Award, which is given each year to the outstanding collegiate kicker in the nation. And that's a very, very prestigious award. And what I found interesting was that Nick Novak was the runner-up in the voting that particular year. So what are the odds of two high school kids who never met, one from Iowa City, one from Virginia, and they just happened to be at the same high school football field at the same time on the same day, and 5 years later be recognized as the top two collegiate kickers in the nation? It truly is a very small world. but fast forward again. Both Nate and Nick enter the NFL and have smashingly successful careers. Nate with the San Diego Chargers, Nick with the Washington Redskins, the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets, and the Houston Texans. In fact, Nick made the cover of Sports Illustrated after making a game-winning field goal for the Redskins. Unfortunately, as we know, Nate's 9-year career with the Chargers was cut short after he suffered a leg injury. And all of a sudden, the Chargers needed a kicker to fill the big void left by Nate. Well, as you might guess, there was a free agent by the name of Nick Novak who the Chargers signed to replace Nate. Well, that's all I've got. I just thought you might enjoy hearing the story about Nate Kaeding, and it really brings true the thought that we have a very, very small world. So back to you, Barb.
Great, thank you so much, Gene. Love the small world story, but I especially love your Rotary moment and your thoughts on what's happening in the United States government. I couldn't agree with you more that the four-way test and the concept of service above self is something that would be great to see in all of our politicians and public servants. So thank you for sharing that. And now we'll go to our program. So it's my honor to introduce our two speakers. So first off, Nate Kaeding, as you have heard, doesn't really need much of an introduction for our members. He's a West High graduate, helped them win 2 state championships, a University of Iowa graduate, where he played on the Hawkeye football team, NFL player with the San Diego Chargers. And then what you may not know is that in 2013, when he retired from the NFL, he actually got an MBA from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business, which is where I work. So I love the fact that he's an MBA grad. And now he has a series of successful business ventures in the Iowa City area, including several restaurants. So he will be interviewing today our main speaker, Steve LaCroix. So Steve completed his 20th and final season with the Minnesota Vikings as the team's executive vice president and chief marketing officer, a role that is responsible for all aspects of Vikings generated revenues and marketing initiatives. He led many teams ranging from corporate partnerships, ticket sales, special projects, guest relations, and fan development. In addition, he led the organization's strategic planning initiatives and was actively involved in all aspects of their 200-acre Viking Lakes development. He also assisted the recently awarded Major League Soccer expansion team in Nashville. His sales and marketing team was responsible for ushering in a new era of Vikings football with the opening of the state-of-the-art US Bank Stadium in 2016. An alumnus of the Tippie College of Business at the University of Iowa, Steve serves on the college's Marketing Institute board. His wife, Susan, is a nursing alum whom he met in his senior year at Iowa, and they are the proud parents of 2 recent Tippie alumni. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nate Kaeding and Steve LaCroix. Nate, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Barb, for having Steve and I here today. And thank you, Gene, for that walk down memory lane there. Some good memories of kicking footballs there at West High. And of course, enjoyed a friendship with Nick Novak out there in San Diego. So thanks for sharing that story. I'm excited to have Steve here and hear what he has to say about his dynamic role at the Minnesota Vikings. As a player in the NFL, I think we all kind of have our blinders on, and I think probably a lot of us just turn on the TV on a Sunday to watch a game and the 3 hours the guys out there playing and forget about the fact that they're this amazing business world behind these NFL teams, very dynamic in terms of marketing and sales and tickets and stadiums and corporate partnerships and TV partnerships and all the various ways that NFL franchises in the league are able to monetize the product that's out on the field. And Steve's been doing this at the highest level for the last 20 years. And on a personal note, I was lucky enough last year to hired by the Vikings to go up and work with their specialist, their kicker, punter, and long snapper for the year. Got to spend a lot of time at the Twin Lakes, brand new state-of-the-art facility, that Steve played a real integral part in putting together, as well as worked a few games at US Bank Stadium. And for those of you that hadn't had the chance to go up to Minneapolis yet and see this stadium, it truly is, I think, one of the best professional stadiums in all of sports and probably the entire world. It's an amazing piece of architecture, impressive to be up in the stands watching a game or up in the coach's booth and down on the field. It's really is impressive. And Steve was integral as well as, in that whole project. And those, as Steve can share the story, those are long, probably almost decade-long processes to get, billion-dollar kind of stadium like that built. So, Steve, I'll hand it over to you. I think it might be great for all of us just to learn a bit more about your journey from Tippie here at the University of Iowa to, through the sports marketing ranks up to Minnesota. A little bit more about your career path.
Yeah, I appreciate that. With both kids as Hawkeye grads, I say this is my $250,000 cup that I got for putting them through college. But yeah, I graduated in 1990 and I went to grad school immediately after that at Western Illinois University for a master's in sport management, and landed an internship with the Indiana Pacers, and that's how I started my sports career. So was fortunate enough to grow within that organization. We built a new arena in the late 90s when Larry Bird was our coach. Went to the NBA Finals once, made the playoffs 9 out of 10 years. It's had a really successful team on the court and really grew that business. Early in my career, I was able to kind of ride along with a lot of veteran sports executives to, get some great experience. And then I was recruited in 2001 to come up to the Minnesota Vikings. It was the previous ownership group, and Red McCombs was out of San Antonio, and they were trying to get a new stadium built in the northern suburbs here in the Twin Cities, and I wanted somebody that had some experience building a new sports facility. And so I agreed to come up here, and then realized pretty quickly the stadium was not going to happen. And Red sold the team in 2005 to the Will family and made it through that transition. And finally in 2016, we opened US Bank Stadium. As Nate said, it's a long process. It was a $975 million project, about half public, half private, really the largest public-private construction project in Minnesota history. So there was a lot of complicated negotiations, the use agreement. The state owns the building. We're the lead tenant. There's a third party that operates it. So there's a lot of stakeholders at the table, and that was just a great experience. And then we hosted a Super Bowl a couple years after we opened US Bank Stadium. We were one game away from being the first team to have a home game for a Super Bowl, and that didn't quite work out. That was a weird day walking into the stadium with the Eagles on the field representing the NFC, and we were so close to having such a special Super Bowl run in our home stadium, but it didn't quite work out. And then we opened up our new headquarters at Viking Lakes, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center a couple years ago. And as Barb mentioned, the 200-acre campus is fully under development. We opened an Omni Viking Lakes Hotel in October. There's about 1,000 apartment units being built. There's just a lot of action going on out there in Eagan, Minnesota, which is just a few minutes from the airport, right off the 494 belt line. So it's been a great 20 years. Kind of feel like I've accomplished a lot and touched all aspects of the business of a professional team, both with Indiana and with Minnesota. And now it's on to a new adventure in 2021, and super excited about it.
Steve, can you talk a bit about kind of how you was there a big break at the beginning? I bet if we polled a lot of undergrads at Tippie right now, a lot of them would raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll take a job in professional sports. It's got to be a very competitive, well sought after job market for folks trying to get into the sports world, sports business world. Was there a big break with the Pacers when you got your first start, looking back on it?
Yeah, I had no connections. My dad, now retired, a high school cross country and track coach in Illinois, and I knew I wanted to get into sports, but not go the coaching and teaching route. And really fortunate enough, where a group of us grad students from Western Illinois traveled to Chicago. I met with a bunch of teams and sporting type businesses there. I did the same thing in Indianapolis. And when we walked into the Pacers office and they presented to us, just something clicked, like, man, I need to work here. And so I just really networked hard to get an internship, and they brought 6 of us in to sell tickets out of the media workroom in Market Square Arena. And that was back in the days of literally just cold calling off of paper lead lists, trying to sell something here and there. And was fortunate enough to get hired a few months after that full time, and And I always said I didn't want to go into sales when I was in college. And once I got into it and realized I could do it, it clicked. And so I was able to then convert over to corporate partnerships after ticket sales. We launched our mascot program, Boomer the Pacers Panther. They put me in charge of the mascot program in addition to my ticketing duties. And at that time, our ticket department also ran the game operations. So every home Pacers game, we were the ones, doing all the game operations and game entertainment. So it was a really great start to the career. But the big break was just the fact that we toured Indianapolis, met with the Pacers, had a very dynamic person end up being my boss when hired full-time, present. And it's just one of those where it gave me the focus to, hey, this is what I want to do, and let's make it happen.
That's awesome. One of the things I was the most impressed about, and you could really tell right away by being up on the campus with the Vikings and in the office and the facility there, is just sort of the civic engagement with the community that the club has. Can you speak a bit about how you guys have kind of integrated that into, not only your marketing strategy, but just the culture of the organization up there? I mean, the Vikings are synonymous with the whole state of Minnesota and Minneapolis. And I was really impressed with the way that you guys had really made that a priority.
Yeah, we really consider ourselves, the Vikings is the upper Midwest team. So that, both Dakotas, really kind of from Des Moines north, there's a lot of Vikings fans. And then as you go about a yard into Wisconsin, we fall off pretty quick when you get into Packer territory. But yeah, it's a passionate brand for the community, for the fan base. Our ownership is very generous in giving back to the community. Our players are super impactful. Some have their own foundations, but even if that's the case, they still, Community Tuesday, players have Tuesdays off during the season if it's a normal Sunday game. And Denny Green, back in his head coaching days, established Community Tuesday, where he wanted the players out in the community on their off day. And so there's just thousands upon thousands of kids and organizations that have been impacted from our players being involved, not just financially, but mentorships and just giving people a hope of what can happen in life. And it's something that the organization takes very, very seriously. And social impact now is a complete separate department. We now have a Vikings Foundation. It used to be the Minnesota Viking Children's Foundation, which partnered with the U of M Children's Hospital. Now it's a separate Vikings Foundation that can really make even more impact in the community.
As you look back, over the last 20 years of your career in sports marketing, can you talk a bit about how, marketing in sports has changed? You saw the onset of social media. And now, I know clubs, they own their own, networks, and they have a variety of different things. What were maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest changes that you've seen during your career?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, there's dramatically different. Obviously, all the social channels. We have basically an in-house broadcasting company, our Vikings Entertainment Network, and they produce content. The advantage to what we call VEN, the advantage to VEN is that we can create content that the other publications or media companies cannot, because they don't have the access that we do. We have a multi-million-dollar studio in our headquarters and a couple dozen folks as part of the VEN crew. And so it's one of those where producing content is no longer just your games on radio and your print program and maybe some other specialty type items. Nowadays it's 24/7, and frankly, the more content you produce, the more it gets consumed. I think we've gotten smarter on how we speak to certain audiences. How you speak on Twitter versus YouTube versus Instagram is different. And so it's just one of those where players have become, very savvy in building their own respective brands. And so a great example is we partnered with Kirk Cousins for a podcast. Kirk was going to do a podcast, and we went to him and his representatives and said, hey, let's work together on this. Have the podcast in our facility, in our studio. Let's jointly share the revenue on it, and let's collaborate on the content and topics. And so I think teams that need to embrace the fact that players, LeBron James to, can name it, even outside the NFL, there's a lot of athletes that have become very smart about their respective personal business and their personal brand.
It's great. Can you take us back to March? The COVID pandemic just at the onset. Can you share a few stories about, a business model dependent upon, TV revenue and people in stadiums and all the sort of things that go along with that? And everybody here today at the meeting, everybody's business has been challenged in certain ways. And I think I'd be curious just to hear from the NFL's perspective, what were some of the bigger challenges or some of the stories that stood out for you guys if you've worked through the COVID pandemic to keep the business going?
Yep, it's been interesting to say the least. That's the last time I was on a plane. I was coming back from Cabo in mid-March to beat the border closing. We weren't quite sure what was going on, and we had immediately shut down our office and gone remote. The NFL draft was coming up shortly thereafter, and Nate, as you know, football operations and football executives have their routine and how they do things, and we had to go fully virtual. So Rick Spielman and his team, picking draft picks from their respective homes with, I think Rick had probably 3 or 4 internet connections as backups just in case, on draft night, something went haywire.
You don't want to miss that #1 pick because you're too many kids on Netflix, zooming too many things.
Yeah. So that it was something where the organization really, came together. Our IT group really stepped up, and it was really a pretty smooth transition. And then, once eventually things settled in and the players were back in the building, and it was really, renegotiating the collective bargaining agreement between the league and teams with the players union. And the players really pushed hard for daily testing, and that's what happened throughout the whole season. Players had to wear, tracking devices anytime they were in the facility, so that they could do contact tracing if someone tested positive. But from a business perspective, revenues were down significantly. We didn't have any fans in the building the whole season. There were some games we were allowed 250 either staff that didn't have game day duties or player and coach family and friends, but never more than 250 people in a 67,000 seat stadium. It was weird, that first home game with no preseason, and so training camp was not open to the public, so everything was different, and everything that was different also impacted the bottom line revenues. When you don't have ticket sales, we had to renegotiate virtually every corporate partner contract because we couldn't fulfill certain elements because our home games were different without fans, or we weren't allowed to have fan events and really, activate with our fan base in the community as much. And so it was a all hands on deck type of thing. And we pulled through it, and hopefully things for the 2021 NFL season for the Vikings organization and the rest of the NFL is back more of a normalcy. There are teams that have fans, Dallas, I think, is up to 27,000 fans for a home game. So it's dramatically different across the 31 respective stadiums, with the Jets and Giants sharing MetLife Stadium. Everybody has a little different situation based on state ordinance, county, city, whatever their respective managing entity is. And so it's really not a level playing field, so to speak, on game day when it comes to fans in the building or not. But the key integrity of the game within the white lines has been equal across the league, with the same testing protocols and COVID policies across every team being exactly the same.
I know something would be definitely of interest to this group here in Iowa City. Do you have a prognosis around college football, NFL football for next fall, the 21 season, in terms of fans allowed in stadiums, what the game might look like? Is there, if you were to kind of shake the crystal ball, would you make a guess on whether we're back 100% of the way or 50% of the way, or what do you?
Well, I guess it's all about vaccine. Yeah, I guess it's all about vaccines. And really, even if the vaccines get caught up by then, it's going to come down to, are our fans comfortable being in large mass gatherings? Some will be, some won't be. Even during the pandemic, as we surveyed our fans, a third were all in for coming back to the stadium the following day after they took the survey. A third were going to come anywhere close until a vaccine was fully out there and everyone was safe. And a third was kind of in the middle of, well, tell me more about your policies and protocols. And so I think that scale is going to shift more so being comfortable. But if society is going to be back to like everybody saying, yeah, let's go sit shoulder to shoulder with 67,000 or 70,000 other fans in some stadiums. But I do think fans will expect, contactless transactions for concessions, which is something we've always wrestled with of, do we go there or not? And then this almost forces our hand in a good way as sports organizations to start thinking that way. We were already fully mobile on our ticketing. We launched that with opening a US Bank Stadium. So you carry your ticket on your smartphone. It makes it much easier to share tickets, transfer, resell. And so we already had crossed that hump, whereas there were some clubs this year that had to really ramp up, assuming they had fans in the building. And so, yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, I think football is in a lot better position, obviously, than the other major sports that are coming up now or quickly. Right. Quickly versus in the fall. I think the bigger question is going to be is training camp and off season, at least from an NFL perspective, are players coming in for mini camps and those kind of things, or is it going to be more virtual like they did this year for a lot of meetings?
Interesting. If you're looking out, 5 years down the road, what do you foresee to be some big changes coming down the pipeline for the NFL? I guess from a fan's perspective, how do you envision the game changing, or how we consume the game and the product that's on the field? Are there any big things that you think will come to the forefront?
Well, sports betting is certainly taking off in our industry. It's as it gets legalized across the country. Iowa's a legal state. We're not, but you're starting to see, and really, I think it's a good way to attract the younger fan base. Maybe those millennials that are more into sports betting than an older fan base. And I think you could see eventually a game having multiple broadcasts. There's maybe a sports betting oriented broadcast that has different camera angles, maybe different stats around prop bets. Certain sports have, I know not to be dangerous, but have certain things that people really gravitate to bet on kind of a last second thing based on the circumstances of the game. So I could see that. You're going to see a lot more personalized content from a fan perspective. Obviously, fans want to produce their content and share that across our platforms, and so I think you'll see that continue to grow. As far as the actual game experience, I hope we set the bar at the right level. In 5 years, there'll be some tweaks, but I think the fun thing is we established some really fun new traditions with the skull chant and the Gallarhorn and other things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At US Bank Stadium. And so now that is really associated with the Vikings brand on a national and worldwide basis. And I think those are going to stick for the remainder of the franchise's time. And so at the end of the day, you need to, as you can tell by watching sports with empty stadiums, it's just not quite as dynamic for a home viewing experience. And Commissioner Goodell said multiple times that full stadiums makes for better TV. Obviously this year we didn't have a choice, but I think we're going to appreciate our fans being back a lot more. Not that we took it for granted before, but it's amazing when you walk in a big 1.7 million square foot building and there's a couple hundred people in there. Is a whole different vibe than when people are rocking and rolling in their purple jerseys and ready for a big NFL matchup. So, the business will change and evolve in emerging categories. Certain things will be, you'll see them partner with professional sports franchises that maybe that industry didn't exist. I mean, you look at, food delivery companies. I mean, that kind of stuff just wasn't even on the radar. Now, some of those companies are taking very big positions with NFL and other leagues and teams. And so that'll continue to evolve, I think.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And you had mentioned at the beginning there that after a 20-year career, you're looking at turning the page and starting a new professional chapter. Can you share a bit about what lies in store for you?
Yeah, it's I'm excited. I'm not quite there yet, but I think I can bring a lot of value to the industry of sports, advising and consulting, and 30 years, 2 different teams, built an NBA arena, an NFL stadium, hosted a Super Bowl, a new practice facility. Really have touched all aspects of the business of professional sports, and really think that I could be an asset and involved in a lot of different. Instead of just one team, kind of season in, season out. I'm excited to spread my wings and really, work on a lot of different projects, teams, entities across the board. And I've been working hard in recent months to kind of get that all pulled together and hopefully with the launch in 2021. And it's amazing, as a player, Nate. I mean, it's season in, season out, and next thing you know, your 9-year career and
yeah,
I'm season in, season out. And next thing you know, you're 30 years at age 52 working for a team. So I'm excited to still be involved very, very much so in the sports industry. But I think there's a lot of other ways to be involved and got 2 kids that are in the sports business. Katie, as Barb said, both are Hawkeye grads. Katie's in Chicago working for a sports marketing agency, and Alex is here in Minnesota working for the esports franchise, the Call of Duty and Rocket League. And so it's kind of fun to see both kids in the industry, but not necessarily on the team side. I think they saw their dad driving home from home games with a lot of heartbreak over the years. So good for them to be involved in the industry, but in a different way. And esports is just really booming in our sports industry. And there's a ton of different games and leagues and teams. And I'm not a gamer, but Alex is, our son, and it's neat to see him to get a start in the industry through something he's really passionate about.
Barb, if we have a couple more minutes, I thought maybe we could open up the chat box to some questions from the audience. And maybe, do we have a little bit of time?
We do have some time. And it looks like Madeline Windauer has her hand raised. Madeline? Oops, you're muted still, Madeline.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. One is, do you think that the teams will be requiring players and staff to get vaccinated? And the second is, can you explain the helmet behind you?
Oh, that's our Super Bowl 52 helmet. So that was the logo. So see that.
Very cool.
I'm afraid to put it on. I may never get it off. But yeah, so as far as the vaccinations go, I do believe by the time the NFL season comes around, it could be a mandate. I guess that's going to have to be collectively bargained for. I don't know, Nate, if you agree. I mean, that's going to have to be I don't think the owners and league can just force that on players. I think it would have to be collectively bargained for. And obviously, NFL players and professional athletes are not the priority right now. It's obviously every state right now is trying to catch up to demand, or at least fulfill what they have in storage. And so hopefully once that kind of rolls along, most of the players get vaccinated, but I'm not sure if the league could say you have to be vaccinated or else you can't play. I don't know, Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, certainly the professional athletes are not anywhere near the top of the heap in terms of a priority. I think you could get when a vaccine does become readily available, franchises and strongly encouraging the vaccine and making it, easily accessible once that time comes, which hopefully, fingers crossed, is by training camp next year, hopefully is kind of what some folks that I know that are, coaching in the NFL and doing some of those things are, hopeful that they're back to some sort of normalcy from that standpoint come training camp. Yeah, it becomes hard when you mandate it, I guess.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Great. So if anybody else has a question, you can raise your hand in the chat. I do have a quick one. Steve, tell us a little bit more about the Major League Soccer team in Nashville.
Yeah, so the Will family bought into the expansion team in Nashville as a limited owner, and the majority owner in his team had never owned a professional sports franchise. So they hired us to come in and help get them off the ground, advise, and I really enjoyed that experience. Nashville's one of my favorite cities in the country. So personally, it was fun to be there more than it would be normally. And really just kind of get them up and running. We learned a ton of lessons through our US Bank Stadium process, and they've broken ground on a new stadium in Nashville. And eventually they hired a CEO and he built his own team. So we faded to the background, but it was really just, to be part of the launch, and with the Will family as part owners, we thought we could bring some things to the table to help them get off to a good start.
Excellent. Looks like we have a question from Ryan Bell. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Barb. As a lifelong Vikings fan, I guess I'm curious, and this might be more of a question for Nate, but looking at the kicking game the Vikings had this year versus last year when Nate was a consultant for the team, I'm just wondering what comments you would make on how the wheels sort of fell off this year, and then looking forward, how does Dan Bailey recover from that and continue on with his kicking career?
Yeah, it's I don't know, Nate, go ahead, man. It's
no, go for it. Kickers are easy targets, though. You got to remember that there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, exactly. It was a challenging year to say the least, and obviously the Vikings have history there from whether it was Gary Anderson or Blair Walsh, and that was one of the drives home with the kids was the Blair Walsh miss in playoffs with Seattle and incredibly cold temperatures. But yeah, it's just one of those where some years I personally think, and I don't want to opine too much here, get out of my lane, but just the fact that practice were very limited, a lot of lot of practices were remote. There were days where the building wasn't accessible. So you just wonder if certain special teams units, just didn't have the kind of the reps, so to speak, even though it was the same, started with the same 3 guys as last year. I don't know, Nate, you can probably opine more so on just, how that all worked, inner workings in a challenging year.
Yeah, I think kickers and kicking by nature were very fragile people, right? So as Steve said, you kind of throw some different variables in there, and disrupted practice times. I know they had changed the long snapper midway through the year, but I think, Dan had an awesome year last year. All the specialist units did, but I think this year is really just kind of a couple really bad games where things weren't going his way, and that's the line of the margin of error in the NFL for place kickers so thin. If you go have one really bad day where you miss 3, and I think even in Dan's case, he missed 4 field goals and an extra point in one game, that takes you from having a really good year to, below average season, just like that. So Dan's a seasoned veteran, and, I think he's poised to bounce back next year with another good year.
Great. It looks like we now have a question from Chris Atchison.
Yeah, Steve, thanks very much. Great presentation. I wonder if I can take you across downtown Minneapolis to the Major League Baseball team over there, and specifically about sports marketing, where Fox Sports North and Sinclair are apparently at some odds. And then Iowa, as I'm sure you're aware, is a blackout by Major League Baseball. Do you have any comments on where the television of Major League Baseball sports might be going?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, obviously the NFL, all of our games are controlled at the league level, so we don't have any local rights other than for preseason. Baseball is different. Each team can cut their own local deal on a regional cable basis. And obviously there's some national games and some protections there, but the risk with that is when you then partner with a regional sports network, and if that regional sports network cannot have a business deal with whoever your cable company is. I know that we had no NBC station here for multiple weeks because of KARE 11's parent company and DirecTV were at odds on renewal rates. And so a lot of times you see it happen when those new regional networks launch, and they're trying to get traction with those cable stations and affiliates, and then eventually they reach a deal, and then they have a channel on the platform. And then obviously the other risk is when the renewal comes up, and it sounds like that's probably the case with your service. And it can be frustrating as a fan for sure that you can't access the games that you expect and had in the past. And I think that's how I'd probably best explain it.
Got it. Next, we have a question from Brad Baldus. Brad?
Thanks, Barb. Steve, I am an avid college wrestling fan and was really excited to go to the national tournament up in US Bank Stadium last spring. Unfortunately, I was really disappointed when it got canceled. Do you foresee Minneapolis and US Bank Stadium trying to host that event again in the future?
I would say definitely. It's just a matter of getting back in the rotation. I'm not aware of kind of who's next on deck, but I think the NCAA was excited. The demand for tickets and suites and premium, I mean, it was at unprecedented levels from what we understood. Now that was managed by the third party operator, so the Vikings weren't directly involved, other than some of our suite partners having access to purchase their respective suite for the weekend. But it's a shame, because I think it would have been great for the community. It would have been on a very large stage at US Bank Stadium in the heart of wrestling, so to speak. And I think it would be a no-brainer to bring it back whenever that next availability is, and hopefully multiple times.
Excellent, thanks.
Great. So are there any other last questions? We have probably time for one more if anybody has one. We'll see if anybody kind of comes forward. I will say, having been to US Bank Stadium, there are many wonderful surprises about that facility. I think that big drum that, I'm sure there's a formal term for that I'm missing, but that big drum, the Skol chant, and then I did not know that you sing after every time you score a touchdown. And that was a big surprise for me. I think especially, us Rotarians, we frequently do sing. And so I would encourage any Rotarian, if you want to get some singing in, is that you could attend a Vikings home game in the future and you would actually sing, you know, Skol Vikings. So,
yeah, the key on that is we have to score. So if it's a low scoring game, you're not going to get as much practice, but it's our regional fight song. So it's kind of kitschy and it's perfect for our tradition. And we wanted to make sure we kept that, obviously, as we went to the new stadium, and fans have a fun time with it.
I will say, Steve, that I haven't played in all 32 of the NFL stadiums. The Skol chant is by far one of the coolest kind of in-game experiences from the fans. It's pretty neat when that gets going. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it took us a few times to get it right. You know, that first home game, we're all a little nervous when you launch a new tradition with that many people, and you're trying to. So we finally found our groove from a fan's perspective of the rhythm and you know, as it builds up, and it's just really cool how it's stuck and will continue to stick down the road.
Yeah, it is. It's a great experience. There's a lot of great aspects to it, and it really makes you realize like how much there is to orchestrate when you are, you know, running a game like that. You know, there's so many pieces, from, you know, the banners that go around on the electric thing to, you know, promote the sponsors. You know, it must be a fascinating matrix of different corporate partnerships and individual partnerships and entertainment options and cheerleaders and dancers and guys dressed up like Vikings. And, you know, there's an awful lot of pieces to the pie.
Yeah, it's probably more than what you realize. And there's, you know, a bunch of staff that handles that on game day, and there's a ton of prep that goes into it. Fortunately, we only 10 home games, hopefully a few more with playoffs every season, but versus baseball's, you know, 81 home games. And obviously, you know, our NFL games maybe a little bit more intense on most weekends, and really every second is scripted, so to speak. But at the end of the day, you can't control what happens between the white lines. And so you really try to have everything prepared, you know, outside of those white lines of the field.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for participating in our program today. And in honor of your participation, our club will actually donate $10 to Rotary International's Polio Plus program in your names. And every donation to Rotary's Polio Plus program is actually matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And so that contribution will actually provide 70 vaccinations for polio around the world. So we'll do that in your names as a thank you. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yep, thanks for having us. And thank you, Steve, for your continued interest in Iowa City and the University of Iowa. Appreciate it. Good luck with the new venture.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks so much. So with that, our meeting will come to a close. So I encourage our members, if you'd like to unmute your microphones, you can join in the cacophony that is the Rotary four-way test. Of all of the things we think and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Great. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Steve and Nate. Appreciate you being here today.
Happy New Year.
Oh, Devin's holding a baby if you looked at a gallery view. One of the twins. There, baby shot. Oh, probably about a month old now, maybe?
Getting close. They were born on the 10th, so 3 days shy.
Got it. That's great. Now, is that Chloe?
This one's Eloise again.
Eloise again. Great. Well, it's good to see you, Devin. Thanks for sharing.
Good to see you too. Bye.
Great. Thanks, everybody.